Chapter 1101. The 9 circular platforms suddenly began to rotate, and streaks of spiritual light descended from above to form a conical light barrier. Tang Wuolin was abruptly struck by a burst of suction force, and in the next instant, a wonderful feeling spread through his entire body. In that instant, he felt as if he had truly become the master of heaven and earth, and that everything in this world was within his grasp. His senses extended out into infinity and beyond, and the elemental particles that originally weren't very clear to him instantly became very clear and defined. The entire mountain ranges seemed to be within the scope of his sensory, and his senses could even extend beyond that to further places. He could even sense that the fortune of the entire Douluo continent was converging toward him. This was a completely indescribable experience, and he felt as if his entire body had undergone a series of transformations. The swelling sensation within his body clearly abated as he had become the ruler of heaven and earth. With the enhancements he received from the spirits of heaven and earth, his power was unmatched. His golden dragon spear had become burning hot in his hand, and there seemed to be deafening dragon's roars reverberating beside his ears. His golden dragon spear seemed to have sprung to life and was shimmering with unprecedentedly brilliant light. The symbol of the seed of life had also become clearer on his forehead, and wisps of green light suddenly began to surge out of the symbol before returning to his body along with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that was being supplied to him by the blood god array. All of a sudden, the entire light barrier took on a faint green hue, and extremely rich life force energy instantly spread through the entire array. The green light descended upon all 9 of the blood gods, and expressions of surprise and elation appeared on their faces in unison. They could clearly sense that their life force was being bolstered significantly, and all of the energy that they had expended before was quickly being replenished. What was even more remarkable was that as this life force energy became more potent, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that had originally only been drawn here by the blood god array suddenly converged in a frenzy as if it had found its origin. Blood One's eyes lit up, and he knew that he had made the right choice. He wasn't completely sure just what that thing within Tang Wuolin's body was, but he could guess that it was somehow related to the entire plane. It had just devoured the essence of 2 abyssal emperors, and now it was time for it to reciprocate them by assisting them in drawing upon planar power. With its assistance, they would have a far better chance of keeping the abyssal plane at bay. Bursts of scintillating light surged through the air, and the black sovereign hovered down below with a cold and completely expressionless look on her face. In her eyes, Tang Wuolin's body seemed to be constantly expanding. As those wisps of light were injected into his body, he quickly reached over 10 meters tall, and his golden dragon spear was also swelling in size along with him. He was only one man, but under the enhancements of the blood god array, he was resembling an invincible deity. The black sovereign abruptly waved her hand through the air, and the vast hordes of abyssal creatures that had paused earlier immediately shot forth into the air. Zhang Guanyun issued a command, and all of the blood god legion soldiers began to attack once again. All types of lasers and cannon blasts intertwined to form a massive net of destruction that cut off the oncoming abyssal creatures. Tang Wuolin held his golden dragon spear in his hand and looked down with a cold expression. As the abyssal creatures down below were killed, a peculiar scene ensued. Not only did their abyssal energy not return to the abyssal plane, they instead surged collectively toward Tang Wuolin. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, the abyssal energy had formed a vortex with the golden dragon spear at its center before surging into the divine weapon. An extremely powerful burst of energy was instantly injected into Tang Wuolin's body, and the reddish golden light around him became even brighter. His body continued to expand, and he reflexively unleashed a spear strike. Another colossal golden dragon emerged from the front tip of his golden dragon spear before crashing into the hordes of abyssal creatures down below, destroying countless abyssal creatures before drawing their abyssal energy toward him. With the enhancements from the spirits of heaven and earth, Tang Wuolin's body had attained a significantly higher tolerance capacity. It was as if he had attained an extra enormous body, and any energy that his actual body couldn't handle was absorbed by this extra body while his aura became more and more powerful. Tang Wuolin was completely sure of the fact that his current level of power was comparable to that of a limit Douluo. With the protection granted to him by his seed of life and the spirits of heaven and earth, he didn't have to worry about his body blowing up into smithereens. This was undoubtedly a situation that couldn't be replicated anywhere else, as there was only a single blood god array on the entire Douluo continent. Furthermore, he had only attained such an enormous amount of power after being reciprocated by all of the energy that the seed of life had absorbed from the abyssal plane. This was definitely an unprecedentedly fantastic experience for Tang Wuolin, and the main benefit of this was that through this experience, he could sense what it was like to become a powerful being of this caliber, which was immensely beneficial to his future cultivation. Under normal circumstances, all soul masters progressed at a slow yet steady rate, as they would only be able to advance further after creating a good foundation for themselves. Just as Zhenhua had once said to Tang Wuolin, if he wanted to focus solely on forging, then there were even ways for him to be quickly elevated to the title Douluo level. However, Tang Wuolin turned down that proposal, as doing so would result in an unstable foundation, which would make it very difficult to reach greater heights in the future. Tang Wuolin had been cultivating for many years, and it could be said that his foundation was extremely solid. He possessed both a dragon core and a soul core, so even though he was absorbing such a vast amount of abyssal energy, he didn't have to worry about anything, as his foundation was far more secure than that of the average soul master. Even so, his cultivation rank still couldn't experience drastic improvements that went beyond the norm. Otherwise, he would still be afflicted by some major issues. As Tang Wuolin's dragon core and soul core converted this abyssal energy, he was only absorbing the most essential parts, and most of it contributed toward enhancing his physical constitution rather than elevating his soul power rank. Even so, his soul power rank had still been elevated to the pinnacle of the soul emperor level in a short time. In comparison, it was far more important for Tang Wuolin to use this energy to strengthen his own body in order to create a good foundation in preparation for breaking his future golden dragon king seals. The golden dragon king seals were most important to Tang Wuolin, as not only could they enhance his powers, they could also kill him, so he had no choice but to take them seriously. A vast amount of energy continued to flow into his body, and he silently sensed all of the changes taking place within the seed of life. He was voluntarily guiding most of this energy into the seed of life and leaving only a very small portion for himself. Even though the seed of life was rather reluctant to accept this energy, it still absorbed all of the energy in its entirety. Not only did the seed of life possess sentience, it also seemed to possess a high level of intelligence, and it understood Tang Wuolin's intentions. The rich life force energy being released was making the reddish golden light around Tang Wuolin more and more pronounced. While the swelling sensation he was experiencing in his own body had receded significantly, he swung his golden dragon spear through the air with reckless abandon without having to worry about running out of energy. Each and every spear strike he unleashed was like a high-grade soul missile being set off, destroying countless abyssal creatures down below. Even abyssal creatures as powerful as black empresses didn't dare to charge toward him. He was truly like an invincible deity, and with the assistance from the blood god legion's high-tech weaponry, he was able to completely stabilize the situation. Even the 5 abyssal emperors didn't dare to engage him in battle, not because they weren't confident in their own ability, but because the more they approached the passageway's exit, the stronger the planar oppression they would be struck by. Chapter 1102. The forefathers of the Douluo continent had made massive sacrifices in order to create this blood god array, and it had constantly been refined over the past 6,000 years. In its current form, the blood god formation was extremely effective when it came to drawing upon the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it was being reciprocated by the life force energy from the seed of life, and that allowed the array to be sustained by more than just the blood god's powers. The black sovereign's brows were tightly furrowed as she looked up at Tang Wuolin, who was constantly unleashing spear strikes and devouring abyssal energy. They could afford to lose this amount of abyssal energy, but this was still chipping away at the essence of the abyssal plane. Furthermore, he had slain 2 abyssal emperors. She was obviously able to sense that this human wasn't very powerful yet. At the very least, he wasn't powerful enough to pose a threat to them. However, the problem was that humans were able to grow and develop far faster than any abyssal creature. If that human were to reach the demigod level, it was quite possible that he could destroy the entire abyssal plane in the future with that weapon of his. At the very least, it would be very difficult for the abyssal plane to conquer this world so long as he continued to exist. As those thoughts flashed through her mind, there was almost substantial killing intent radiating from her eyes. It was no wonder that the Holy Lord, who had been hibernating this entire time, waiting for the abyss to evolve into a divine realm, had awakened and was trying to break open this main passageway at all costs. A human being that posed a threat to them really had appeared. They had to kill him no matter what before he became too powerful. With that in mind, the Black Sovereign's expression cooled even further. However, she didn't immediately join the battle. The 4 abyssal monarchs beside her were already raring to go, but she was still waiting calmly for an opportunity. With the current situation of the blood god array, there wouldn't be much of a chance for them to be able to break through it. The debilitating effect of this alternate plane was simply too powerful, and even with her immense powers, she would only be able to assure her own safety. If more abyssal emperors were to fall, then the foundation of the abyssal abyssal plane would be shaken once again. An opportunity would definitely come, and when it arrived, they were going to destroy the human race in one fell swoop. Black threads revolved around the Black Sovereign's hands before forming a massive net in midair. The net was constantly devouring and absorbing the abyssal energy in the air before injecting it into the cracks on the seal. The cracks were constantly fluctuating in size. They would contract when being repressed by the power of the blood god array, but they would then expand in the face of the abyssal plane's unreserved efforts to break the seal. And as this cycle continued, more and more abyssal creatures were rushing out of the cracks. As Tang Wuling continued to lay waste to the abyssal creatures down below, two more abyssal emperors emerged. Neither of them were abyssal sovereigns, but the number of high-level abyssal powerful beings had clearly increased. Blood One was pouring his power into the blood god array while inspecting the situation down below with a cold expression. His eyes were completely emotionless, and he wasn't very concerned about the current situation. The blood god array was already operating at full power, so if the abyssal plane wanted to maintain the cracks, then they would have to make some extremely heavy sacrifices. Even though they could recycle some abyssal energy, it was not that easy to convert this abyssal energy into offensive power. As long as they could keep the abyssal plane at bay, they would definitely be dealt heavy blows during the course of this battle, and perhaps they wouldn't possess the power to instigate another abyssal tide for the next several centuries. After receiving reciprocation from the seed of life, the blood god array was currently in the best condition it had ever been in. With the enhancements that Tang Wuling was receiving from the array, Blood One was confident that no one would be able to get past him unless a true god were to appear. Within the area encompassed by the blood god array, Tang Wuling's powers were currently at the pinnacle of the demigod level. It wasn't the case that he had actually reached this level. Instead, it was the energy fluctuations being generated by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from his attacks that were unleashing this level of power. Even if the most powerful abyssal sovereign were to descend upon this world, they may not be able to get past Tang Wuling in his current form, and with the seed of life on his side, none of the abyssal emperors would dare to engage in a direct battle with Tang Wuling. After all, the seed of life was capable of devouring even their planar seeds. As such, as soon as Tang Wuling began to unleash his attacks from the center of the blood god array, Blood One already knew that there was no way for the blood god legion to lose this battle. Even he couldn't have predicted that Tang Wuling would be able to keep the entire abyssal plane at bay on his own when he wasn't even a soul sage yet. The vice commander of the blood god legion, Long Tianwu, was also on the scene, but his heart was filled with complex emotions. He looked on at Tang Wuling, who was clad in a suit of radiant golden armor and emanating peerlessly dazzling light, and for the first time, he was regretting his decision. He regretted implementing the rule that prevented Tang Wuling from earning promotions through his forging accolades, and he regretted cautioning his daughter against getting too close to him. This young man did indeed shoulder a burden and responsibility that was far heavier than anyone else, but at the same time, he possessed more power and aptitude than anyone else of his age. As one of the highest-ranking officials of the blood god legion, he was naturally aware of what the blood god array was all about. At this moment, Tang Wuling was able to maintain this array to such an extent through his own powers alone. This meant that as long as he existed, there would be virtually no way for the abyssal plane to invade the Douluo continent. Tang Wuling's reputation in the legion was undoubtedly going to be significantly enhanced following this battle, and he would most likely become even more influential than Jiang Wanyun was at his age. After all, Jiang Wanyun also possessed extraordinary aptitude, but even he didn't possess the ability to defend the abyssal passageway on his own. If Tang Wuling were willing to accept the role, Jiang Wanyun would definitely make Tang Wuling the successor to his role as legion commander without any hesitation. No one was more suited to the role than he was, and he would definitely receive the support of the entire legion. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to regret his actions. Thankfully, this young man didn't seem to have held a grudge against him. With that in mind, his gaze began to reflexively sift through the crowd in search of his own daughter. He quickly caught sight of Long Yakshu in the distance. As the commander of the special service department, Long Yakshu was responsible for reinforcing the long-range attacking units at any moment required. She was constantly on the move, but her eyes had never left the golden figure that was hovering in the air. Looks like you've got a better eye than your old man, Yakshu. A self-deprecating smile appeared on Long Tianwu's face, and he no longer had any intention of holding back his own daughter from pursuing the man of her dreams. The Douluo continent was still a world where power reigned supreme. Even if Tang Wuling had to face extremely powerful enemies in the future, he would most likely be able to at least keep himself safe with his abilities. Just as these thoughts were flashing through Long Tianwu's mind, his brow suddenly furrowed slightly as he discovered that an indescribable chilling sensation had welled up in his heart. This was a very special sensation, and as a titled Douluo, his senses were extremely sharp. This was not good. There was something wrong. Long Tianwu reflexively cast his gaze toward a certain direction, and there didn't seem to be anything amiss over there. However, right at this moment, his gaze suddenly landed on a blood god legion soldier. This was a soldier who was responsible for operating a soul cannon, and there didn't appear to be any issues with his movements. However, Long Tianwu could clearly sense that he was somehow different from everyone else. His martial soul was ice, so in this world that was filled with snow and ice, his senses were far sharper than other powerful beings of the same caliber. He had become absorbed in his train of thought earlier, so his attention had strayed from the main battlefield, and as such, he wasn't able to sense that something was amiss down below. Long Tianwu didn't say anything. Instead, he began to approach that person while activating his own soul power in a surreptitious manner. He trusted his own judgment. However, right at this moment, that person seemed to have also sensed something. The soul cannon that he was operating suddenly stopped firing, and he stood up before turning around to look at Long Tianwu. Long Tianwu was greeted by the sight of a young face that was wearing a faint smile, but in his eyes, that smile was clearly filled with sinister undertones. In the next instant, that man suddenly sprang into action. He abruptly transformed into a wisp of smoke, and 8 other figures in different directions also sprang into action in unison. There were 9 of them in total, and each of them was pouncing toward one of the 9 blood gods at the same time. Not only were they extremely fast, they also instantly released their suits of battle armor to reveal that they were all 3-word battle armor masters, and their auras also indicated that they were all of the titled Douluo level. What was even more terrifying was the powerful evil aura erupting from their bodies. After being struck by these evil auras from the outside, the stable blood god array clearly waved slightly. Chapter 1103. It was undoubtedly the case that the blood god array was extremely powerful, and it could even be said that this was the most powerful array on the entire Douluo star. However, it also had a problem, which was that it could only target beings from alternate planes. The plane of power that was manifested by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth only rejected outsiders, but it didn't affect the beings that belonged to this plane. These 9 figures that suddenly emerged definitely didn't belong to the abyssal plane, but they were attacking the 9 blood gods as if they were allied with the abyssal plane. This sudden development had struck so abruptly that everyone was caught off guard. It was also right at this moment that the Black Sovereign also sprang into action. She had been observing the exit of the abyssal passageway this entire time, and she immediately led the 6 abyssal emperors to launch an attack against the defensive line. Thus, the blood god legion was under attack both from the inside and the outside. This was the opportunity that the Black Sovereign had been waiting for. It was an opportunity that had been created for them by their allies. The current stable situation was suddenly turned on its head, and no one could have anticipated that this would happen. Even Blood One was stunned that enemies had appeared on the inside in such a secluded place on the continent, and there were so many of them at once. Jiang Wanyun was the main commander that was overseeing the entire battlefield, and he was the one to react first. Long Tianwu had already informed him of the situation via voice transmission as soon as he sensed that something was amiss. However, the enemies had also reacted very quickly, pouncing toward the blood gods at once and completely taking them by surprise. The 3-word battle armor master who was charging toward Blood One gave him a sinister smirk, and a burst of light suddenly appeared on his back before hurtling directly toward Jiang Wanyun. As soon as the ball of light appeared, it began to radiate extremely scorching golden light, and a powerful metallic aura erupted from it in a frenzy. Jiang Wanyun was immediately able to identify this as a 9th-grade soul missile. This missile possessed enough destructive power to raise an entire mountain to the ground, and there were so many blood god legion soldiers present, all of whom would be in grave danger if the soul missile were to explode. Jiang Wanyun instantly released his mirror domain without any hesitation to engulf the 9th-grade soul missile. At a time like this, his decisiveness as the commander of the blood god legion was on full display. He didn't even take a single glance at the 9 blood gods before his mirror domain engulfed the soul missile. Immediately thereafter, he charged straight into the blood god array while his domain ejected the soul missile toward the 7 oncoming abyssal emperors. Jiang Wanyun knew that in this situation, there was no way for him to address both sides at once. He could only prioritize one side over another. The enemies from the abyssal plane were indeed very powerful, but the entire blood god legion was there to keep them at bay. In contrast, these internal enemies were far more fearsome. If the abyssal emperors were allowed to charge through the blood god array, then disaster would truly be upon them. As such, after redirecting the 9th-grade soul missile toward the Black Sovereign and the others, he immediately rushed into the blood god array to eradicate the internal enemies. Even eliminating Lieutenant Douluo wouldn't want to face a 9th grade soul missile's terrifying destructive power head-on. Otherwise, that 12th grade soul missile wouldn't have been able to destroy the entire Shrek Academy. Jiang Wanyun had undoubtedly made the right decision here. If he were to be bogged down by the enemies from the abyssal plane, then the internal problems would only be further exacerbated. At this moment, the 9 blood gods were being attacked at once, and Long Tianwu was the first to react. He finally managed to stop the enemy that he had discovered first before he could reach Blood 8. He unleashed a ferocious barrage of attacks to stop this enemy in his tracks, but the enemy was also extremely powerful. A wisp of grey mist exploded from his body amid a dull thump, and the ice and snow being released by Long Tianwu quickly turned grey. Immediately thereafter, piercing screeches and terrifying howls of anguish rang out around him. "You're an evil soul master." Long Tianwu roared with fury. He raised his right hand in front of him, and a blue ice spike erupted from the ground. In the instant that it appeared, a peculiar scene unfolded. One of the 9 types of spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the air was suddenly diverted onto the ice spike, causing it to instantly expand in size. All of the evil aura in the surrounding area was frozen solid under the guidance of the ice spirit. The Blood God Legion had been able to keep the abyssal plane at bay for 6,000 years, and they certainly hadn't done so through dumb luck. In particular, all of the powerful beings who hailed from families that had served the Blood God Legion for multiple generations were all extremely fearsome. Compared to normal soul masters, the main advantage evil soul masters had lain in the unpredictable nature of their abilities. However, if they were faced with truly powerful soul masters, then this advantage would be significantly neutralized. As expected, the evil soul master's expression changed drastically, and he instantly rushed back in retreat. He was here to launch a surprise attack, not to throw his own life away. When the aura of the ice spirit had entered his body, he had felt as if his soul were about to be frozen solid, and his powers were significantly debilitated as a result. Long Tianwu didn't give chase to press his advantage. Instead, the ice spike that he had summoned hurtled directly toward another evil soul master while radiating the aura of the ice spirit. The most important thing here was to protect the 9 blood gods. The main advantage that the evil soul masters had on their side was the element of surprise. If they hadn't caught everyone off guard, even 9 3-word battle armor masters would struggle to survive in the face of tens of thousands of Blood God Legion soldiers. This was no longer the generation where a titled Douluo could reign supreme over an entire army. The powerful modern soul weapons of the current generation posed a very significant threat, even against top-tier soul masters. The 9 evil soul masters had sprung into action at once, and they were trying to create an opportunity for the abyssal emperors. A faint green figure, who was also the fastest among the 9 evil soul masters, reached Blood 1 virtually in the blink of an eye. He had put on a piece of green headgear that revealed only his eyes, nose, and mouth, so it was impossible to glean his facial features. His eyes were completely dark green in color, and there were faint traces of purple intermingled within his suit of green battle armor. Before he had even reached Blood 1, the latter was struck by a rank, repugnant odor. The evil soul master swung his arms through the air, slashing his 2 side-like weapons toward Blood 1 like a pair of long green snakes. It was undoubtedly the case that the true absolute core of the Blood God array was Blood 1. If he were to be shaken, then the array would no longer be able to be maintained. As such, this evil soul master was attacking with all his might from the get-go. Blood 1 looked on with a cold expression at the 2 streaks of green light that were sweeping toward him. Never did he think that humans would be plotting against them in this battle against the abyssal plane, which would directly impact the survival of the entire human race. To think that these deranged evil soul masters would choose to ally themselves with the abyssal plane, it was no wonder that the abyssal plane was able to break open the main passageway and unleash an abyssal tide of unprecedented proportions. This was clearly an attack that had been planned for a very long time. The Holy Spirit cult was working together with the abyssal plane to destroy the entire Douluo continent. He almost found it laughable that these people were deranged enough to completely disregard the survival of the entire human race. Blood 1's eyes reflected the oncoming streaks of green light, and he raised his left hand, upon which a longsword that was around 4 feet in length appeared in his grasp. As he maintained the Blood God array, he gently slashed his sword through the air. His attack appeared to be very gentle, and there were no energy fluctuations being released. But the green armored evil soul master's expression abruptly changed drastically. He could sense that after Blood 1 unleashed that sword strike, it was as if his entire being had disappeared and fused into the surrounding environment. All of the particles of every element in the air immediately became a part of him and heeded his command. Wasn't he maintaining the Blood God array? How was he still able to do this? And why was his spiritual power? Chapter 1104. The 2 oncoming green snakes were instantly destroyed, and a burst of invisible sword intent also fell upon the evil soul master's body. The green armored evil soul master only just managed to position his sides in front of his chest, only for the sides to be destroyed in the next instant, and his battle armor also crumbled in large chunks. His entire body was sent flying backward, and a mouthful of blood was thrown up onto the headgear that he was wearing. The Holy Spirit cult had already held the heartless Douluo, who was the master of the Tang sect in the Douluo palace, in extremely high regard. However, they also knew that it would take an enormous amount of power to maintain the Blood God array and draw upon planar power. Even so, they had still underestimated him. Even as he was maintaining the array, he still had enough power left over to severely wound his attacker, who was a hyper Douluo clad in a suit of 3-word battle armor master. After reaching a certain level of power, the advantage held by evil soul masters simply ceased to exist. A hint of disappointment appeared on Blood 1's face. He was attempting to kill his attacker with that sword strike, but it seems that this evil soul master was just powerful enough to survive that attack. At this point, all of the other blood gods had also been attacked. Under normal circumstances, these surprise attacks would be lethal as it would be very difficult for them to deal with their enemies while maintaining the array. However, the situation was a bit more optimistic due to the replenishment they'd received from the reciprocation of the Seed of Life. As such, they had some power to resist their foes. Blood 2 and Blood 3 both managed to keep their attackers at bay with relative ease, and immediately thereafter, these evil soul masters were attacked by the powerful beings of the Blood God Legion. However, the rest of the blood gods were having a hard time. Blood 8 was the luckiest among them as the evil soul master who had tried to attack her was stopped in his tracks by Long Tianwu. In contrast, Blood 9 was in the most peril as the evil soul master who was attacking him was even more powerful than he was. In reality, the Holy Spirit cult hadn't actually expected to take down Blood 1 during this operation. They were only hoping to distract the other blood gods and create chaos while their true target was the weakest link, Blood 9. The Holy Spirit cult had been studying the Blood God Legion for more than just a day or two, and they had infiltrated this place specifically for this opportunity. They had even conducted some research into the Blood God array. Among all of the blood gods, Blood 9 was undoubtedly going to be the weakest one, but the evil soul master who was attacking him was even more powerful than the one who had attacked Blood 1, and she was unleashing a full force attack to take down Blood 9 in one fell swoop. The Blood God array had to be maintained by 9 people, and not just any title Douluo could fill in. The 9 people had to have practiced together for many years before they could maintain the array together. As such, as long as they could kill even just a single one of the blood gods, the array would completely fall apart. The Holy Spirit cult had never been naive enough to think that they could overpower the entire Blood God Legion in a direct conflict. After all, this was the most powerful legion on the entire continent. All they were trying to do was to guide the abyssal plane into this world so an all-out war could ensue between the human world and the abyssal plane. Regardless of who won this war in the end, countless beings would most definitely perish, and that was the ideal situation for the Holy Spirit cult as they derived sustenance from all types of negative emotions and dead vengeful spirits. The evil soul master who had appeared before Blood 9 was a woman with a black veil over her face. As soon as she sprang into action, her Blood God Legion uniform had torn into shreds before vanishing into nothingness, revealing a suit of inky black battle armor that was shimmering with faint purple light. Her weapon was a purplish black longsword that wasn't releasing any energy, but there was also a purplish black figure with 3 pairs of wings hovering behind her. If Yuan and Yui were present on the scene, she would immediately be able to identify that this was a projection of a fallen angel. Furthermore, this was a high-level fallen angel as its 6 wings represented the title Douluo level. On top of that, this evil soul master was certainly not an ordinary title Douluo. She instantly slashed her dark demonic sword through the surrounding area 8 times, and 9 soul rings also appeared around her, consisting of 6 blacks and 3 reds. At this moment, her 5th soul ring had lit up, and following her 8 sword strikes, 8 inky black gates of light appeared in the surrounding area, cutting off all of the Blood God Legion soldiers' fields of view. A 3-headed giant dog that was over 5 meters in length and over 3 meters tall rushed out of one of the gates in a ferocious manner, and attacks of the ice, fire, and darkness elements were erupting out of its 3 mouths. These were infernal gates, and the creature that had just emerged was the infernal Cerberus. Yuan and Yui also had the same soul skill, but it was nowhere near as powerful as the one being unleashed here. As soon as the 8 infernal gates appeared, curled horns with their tips pointing up toward the heavens resembling mountain goat horns appeared on her head. Brilliant light erupted from the dark demonic sword in her hand, and she slashed it toward Blood 9 without any technique to speak of. Blood 9 was clearly being protected by the entire legion, but in this instant, he felt as if he he were completely alone as he faced this enemy. The evil soul master wore a black mask over her face, revealing only her eyes and eyebrows. There were also faint purple floral patterns on the surface of her mask that gave her a sense of mystery. Her eyes were also very special. They were of a deep purple color, and they were as alluring as the abyss, making the onlooker feel as if their soul were about to be sucked into her eyes. The long sword reached Blood 9 in a flash, and his expression changed drastically. He was the weakest among the 9 blood gods, and just maintaining the blood god array was already taking up all of his power and effort, so he had no power left over to defend himself. Furthermore, this woman was far more powerful than he was. Right in this instant, countless thoughts flashed through Blood 9's mind, and he abruptly bit down on the tip of his own tongue as crimson light erupted from his eyes as a layer of flames rose up over his body. He had no choice but to ignite his flame of life. All soul masters that are above the sulking stage had the ability to ignite their flames of life. Doing so would instantly increase their powers significantly, but the flames of life drew upon one's life force and aptitude as fuel. Once a flame of life was ignited, one would quickly overexert their own life force before perishing. Blood 9 had seen the 7 abyssal emperors springing into action, and he knew that if he couldn't withstand this attack, disaster would befall the entire blood god legion. As such, he had to maintain the blood god array no matter what, even if it meant giving his own life. He had already developed this resolve from the moment he became a backup blood god. Every single member of the blood god legion was willing to lay down their lives to guard the abyssal passageway when required. So in this instant, there was only a faint smile on his face, and his expression was devoid of any pain or sorrow. This was his glory as the former Blood 9. Blood 2 had just forced back the evil soul master who had attacked him, and tears immediately welled up in his eyes. However, he was one of the cause of the blood god array, so he couldn't do anything. He and Blood 9 were connected by blood, so even with the infernal gates in the way, he could still clearly sense that his son's life force was being elevated to an unprecedented level, and he was fully aware of what this entailed. Blood 9 heaved a faint sigh as holy and pristine flames of life burned around his body, and he raised his right hand before a spear appeared in his grasp. The spear was emanating a layer of holy radiance as it struck the dark demonic sword. A crisp ringing sound rang out, and the spear shattered violently along with Blood 9's body as a hint of astonishment appeared in his eyes. Even after igniting his flame of life, he was still struggling to withstand this evil soul master's attack. This was a clear indication that she was far more powerful than he was. Both of them were 3-word battle armor masters, yet their powers were on entirely different levels. Chapter 1105. Blood 9 instantly realized that the enemy he was facing had most likely already reached rank 97 or above in her soul power. Rank 95 was the minimum threshold for a hyper Douluo, and there was a saying that each rank above that was like a heavenly run climb up. With every successive rank that was attained past rank 95, one's powers would be increased drastically. Furthermore, this evil soul master's martial soul was also of the highest caliber. His father's soul power was rank 97, yet even he may not be able to defeat this opponent. All of these thoughts flashed through Blood 9's mind in an instant, and he opened his mouth to expel a mouthful of blood. The blood burst into flames in midair, transforming into a ball of reddish golden flames that landed on his spear. All of a sudden, a burst of indescribable radiance erupted from the spear. Even the evil soul master that he was facing had become rather hesitant about how to proceed. Boom boom boom. Powerful attacks were raining down upon her infernal gates from the outside, and despite her immense powers, the gates wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks for long. Black light flashed from her dark demonic sword, and the horns on her head instantly turned into a dark purple color. Immediately thereafter, the surrounding space began to warp violently, and Blood 9's 3-word battle shattered amid a resounding boom before transforming into a storm of metal shrapnel that swept toward the evil soul master. At the same time, blood mist was pouring out of almost all of the pores on his entire body, and this blood mist was infused into his flame of life, causing it to burn even brighter. A hint of surprise flashed through the evil soul master's purple eyes. She had thought that this would be an easy opponent for her to take down, but he was unexpectedly tenacious. She had no choice but to protect herself by withdrawing her dark demonic sword, and it transformed into a dark purple light barrier that kept Blood 9's attack at bay. Right at this moment, 3 of her 8 infernal gates shattered almost in complete unison, and several formidable auras instantly surged toward her. As expected of a blood god, there was no emotion in her words, but her voice was tinged with a peculiar seductive quality. Her dark purple figure rose up into the air, and a purplish black rift abruptly appeared up above. As she rose upward, she slashed her dark demonic sword through the air, and her ninth soul ring abruptly lit up. The sky dimmed, and the other 8 evil soul masters all transformed into streaks of purple light that vanished into the rift in a flash. As for herself, she took one final meaningful glance at Blood 9 before also disappearing into the rift. Blood 9's attention had been focused on her the entire time, and in the instant that their eyes met right before her departure, he was suddenly struck by a strange feeling. Those eyes were completely expressionless, yet they had been imprinted deep into his mind. However, he didn't have any spare mental capacity to think about this. His flame of life was burning in an extremely exuberant manner, and he was currently more powerful than he had ever been in his life, but he couldn't snuff out the flame. Blood 9 was throwing up large mouthfuls of blood in an uncontrollable manner, and his flame of life became more and more exuberant as it injected itself into the blood god array to stabilize it. Blood 5, Blood 6, Blood 7, and Blood 9 had all been wounded to a certain extent during that surprise attack, but thankfully, the seed of life had reciprocated them with enough energy for them to survive that ordeal. The blood god array was wavering and flickering, but it didn't collapse in the end. However, there was no going back for Blood 9. His flame of life had already burned to the point of no return, and it would continue to burn until his body and soul had both been burned away into nothingness. Tears began to streak down Blood 2's face. He only had one son, and despite how strict he normally was with Blood 9, watching his son die before his eyes without being able to do anything was naturally an extremely excruciating feeling. Blood 2 was in a state of complete despair, but he was greeted by the sight of his son's smiling face, even as blood continued to gush out of his mouth. It was as if he were communicating to Blood 2 through this smile, telling him that he hadn't brought dishonor upon him nor the blood god battalion. However, none of that was important to Blood 2. All he wanted was for his son to survive. All of the auras of the blood gods had become very unstable. In particular, Blood 8, who was situated the closest to Blood 9, already had tears shimmering in her eyes. She knew that Blood 9 really liked her and had always been pursuing her, but she was too conceited for her own good, and she always told him that she would only give him a chance if he could become more powerful than her. Blood 9 had always been working toward that goal, and the competitive Blood 8 was also constantly improving. In the end, he never managed to surpass her. At this moment, Blood 9's flame of life had reached the peak of its exuberance. It was drawing closer and closer to the point where it would be entirely snuffed out. Blood 8's heart was filled with boundless remorse. She hated herself for being so arrogant and not accepting his feelings sooner. Blood 9's gaze shifted from his father to Blood 8, and even though he was still constantly throwing up blood, his smile became very gentle. The pride in his eyes had disappeared and was replaced by a warm gaze. He wanted to imprint the image of her firmly in his mind during the final moments of his life, and use his final radiance to bless her and wish her well. Following the surprise attacks from the evil soul masters, a battle of life and death was also unfolding within the blood god array. Resounding booms rang out across the entire abyssal passageway amid fearsome metallic storms, and countless abyssal creatures were torn into shreds. The destructive power of the 9th grade soul missile was simply far too fearsome, even more so than the abyssal creatures could comprehend. These super weapons had already existed over 6,000 years ago, but at the time, the human army didn't use them in battle in fear of harming their own allies. However, here in this abyssal passageway, there were only abyssal creatures around, so there was no chance of any allies being harmed. As such, the explosion of the 9th grade soul missile completely stopped the 8 abyssal emperors in their tracks. The Black Sovereign spread open her wings, which transformed into a barrier of darkness to shield herself and the other 7 abyssal emperors. At the same time, she released her demonic engulfment mist to its full extent, and it intertwined with the metallic storm in a fierce clash. In order to protect the other 6 abyssal emperors, she had no choice but to withstand the explosive power of the soul missile head-on, and in the face of the missile's tremendous power, even the Black Sovereign's aura was significantly hampered. This type of explosive energy was also unable to be absorbed by her demonic engulfment mist, and Jiang Wanyin took advantage of this brief respite to fly over to Tang Wulin. He said in an urgent voice, "Wulin, don't worry about anything aside from fighting enemies. I'll take care of everything else." His 7th soul ring lit up as he spoke, and the mirror behind him instantly expanded to a diameter of over 100 meters. Jiang Wanyun's body had already fused with the mirror, and this was his mirror true body. Tang Wulin took a deep breath before letting loose a low cry. "Everyone, lend me your power." 6 streaks of light emerged from his body to heed his call, and they were none other than the 6 plant system great beasts of the ice fire yin yang Yang Well. They were led by the beautiful silk tulip, and the group consisted of the delicate inferno apricot flower, the octagonal mysterious ice grass, the black shade divine bamboo, the land dragon golden melon, and the king gaze dew. These great beasts had all attained intelligence already, and ever since they decided to follow Tang Wuling, they had constantly been nurtured by the aura of the seed of nature within Tang Wuling's spiritual world. These 6 great beasts very rarely communicated with him under normal circumstances, but they were all genuinely thankful for the decision they had made. In the beginning, they had departed with Tang Wuling so they could bask in the aura of the seed of life in order to fortify their current powers before searching for opportunities to make breakthroughs. However, they quickly discovered that they were deriving far more benefits by following Tang Wuling than they had expected. Tang Wuling's bloodline aura was downright incredible to them, and what was even more astonishing was that every time Tang Wuling made a breakthrough, particularly after his dragon core took shape, his rich blood essence power would wash over their bodies, providing them with more sustenance than even the ice fire Yin Yang Well did. The ice fire Yin Yang Well contains 2 different types of spiritual energy of heaven and earth, yet at this stage, Tang Wuling's rich life force energy and golden dragon king bloodline aura was able to enhance them to an even greater extent than the ice fire Yin Yang Well. In a sense, they were already no longer pure soul beasts. After exceeding 100,000 years of age and attaining human forms, they had to also imitate human bloodlines. Even if they didn't choose to be reborn as humans, this was still a necessary process. Chapter 1106. The most difficult aspect of their cultivation lay in imitating bloodline auras. With the injection and nourishment of Tang Wuling's rich bloodline aura, they had all benefited immensely and taken the first steps to stabilize their human forms. Of course, energy was conserved, so they weren't just taking energy from Tang Wuling. At the same time, they were also providing him with benefits as well. Why was Tang Wuling's spiritual power able to improve so quickly? Why was he able to sense the elemental particles of the world so quickly? This was all directly correlated to the 6 plant system great beasts. They had completely opened up their affinity with the elements to Tang Wuling, making it easier for his spiritual power to comprehend the origins of these elements. Through this process, his spiritual power was naturally able to improve at a far faster rate. At the same time, all of them were life forms that were comprised of extremely pure life force energy, and they were constantly reciprocating this energy to Tang Wuling in order to nourish his body. It could be said that the aura of the seed of life was more suitable for Tang Wuling to absorb after it was filtered through them, and all of this was taking place in a very subtle and profound manner. As such, even though Tang Wuling hadn't consumed any of the spirit items in the ice fire Yin Yang Well as his friends had, he had actually reaped the greatest rewards from that trip. This was why he was able to make so many consecutive breakthroughs in such a short time without suffering any negative side effects. At this point, the 6 plant system great beasts' auras were completely different from what they had been in the past, and each of them had a domain of a different attribute around their bodies. The beautiful silk tulip was standing directly in front of Tang Wuling with a faint pink light emanating from his body. The murky air in the surrounding area was instantly cleared, and even Zhang Wanyu was feeling greatly reinvigorated after inhaling the fragrance that he was releasing. The beautiful silk tulip was the monarch of all immortal plants, making it a plant system being of an even higher caliber than Tang Wuling's blue silver emperor. The fact that all of the immortal plants in the ice fire Yin Yang Well were willing to pledge their subordination to him was a clear indication of his lofty status in the plant world. It may not possess any direct defensive abilities, but its assistance abilities were unmatched among all other immortal plants. The delicate inferno apricot flower was situated to the front left direction of Tang Wuling. There was a scorching red light radiating from her body, and this was stemming from fire elemental particles. The mysterious octagonal ice grass was situated to the front right direction of Tang Wuling, and he was radiating an icy blue light. There was a frosty aura around him that was the direct polar opposite to that of the delicate inferno apricot flower, but at this moment, their auras seemed to be drawing upon and improving one another. They appeared to be in opposition against one another in the ice fire Yin Yang Well, but in reality, they had already completed Yin Yang neutralization in the ice fire Yin Yang Well. As such, not only did they not debilitate each other in one another's presence, it was instead the case that both of them were greatly enhanced. The land dragon golden melon and black jade divine bamboo were situated to the rear left and rear right directions of Tang Wuling, respectively. The land dragon golden melon was radiating yellow light, while the black jade divine bamboo was emanating an azure domain. Finally, there was the king gaze dew, which was situated directly behind Tang Wuling and was emitting a faint white light. The 6 immortal plants were all ready for action. Zhang Wanyu was already situated deep within his own domain after releasing his mirror true body, and he was quite stunned by the scenes unfolding before his eyes. He had already thought that he held a very high opinion of Tang Wuling, but it appeared that Tang Wuling was still far more powerful than he had imagined. These beings clearly weren't humans, but they were able to adopt human forms, and that was a clear indication of what they were. These were true 100,000-year-old soul beasts. In this current day and age, where soul beasts were on the brink of extinction on the Douluo continent, even a single 100,000-year-old soul beast was a very rare sight to behold, let alone 6. 6 soul rings then emerged from beneath Tang Wuling's feet, consisting of 4 blacks, 1 greenish golden, and 1 orange. Before Tang Wuling knew it, his first 3 soul rings had already been elevated to the 10,000-year-old level. It had been a long time since he had visited the spirit ascension plane, but his soul rings had still evolved over time. Furthermore, they seemed to have only just made the breakthrough, so it was most likely due to the reciprocation he'd received from the sea of life after absorbing the planar seeds. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. His eyes were shimmering with an indistinct light while his golden dragon spear was glowing with brilliant radiance, and he pointed the spear downward. The beautiful silk tulip raised his head to look up at the blood god array up above. A slightly mocking smile suddenly appeared on his face. He raised both hands before feigning an embracing motion, and all of the 9-colored light on the beautiful silk tulip rippled before being drawn downward by him in a tornado-like form. Was this spirit borrowing? Even the true core of the blood god array, Blood 1, was stunned to see this, let alone Zhang Wanyu. Even among the 9 blood gods who were operating the blood god array, only Blood 1 was capable of using the spirit borrowing ability. Yet this being that appeared to be Tang Wuling's soul spirit was showing that it was capable of doing this as well. A massive flower naturally blossomed behind Tang Wuling, and it was none other than the beautiful silk tulip in its true form, devouring heaven and earth. The beautiful silk tulip had unleashed the soul skill in Tang Wuling's stead, and without requiring an instruction from him, planar power and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth immediately converged toward Tang Wuling before instantly filling his entire body. He felt as if his body had already become part of the elements around him, and furthermore, there were bursts of suction force originating from all 5 of the other directions. The 6 immortal plants were all borrowing his power to strengthen their domains, and their auras instantly began to elevate at a rapid rate. The Black Sovereign had already taken care of the explosion caused by the 9th grade soul missiles, and she continued to rise directly up toward Tang Wuling. The 6 other abyssal emperors behind her had also unleashed their abilities, and all of them only had a single target, Tang Wuling. However, right at this moment, the Black Sovereign was greeted by the sight of Tang Wuling's eyes, which were shimmering with 9-colored light. Even the golden scales on his suit of 2-word battle armor had been covered by a layer of 9-colored light. All of a sudden, the Black Sovereign felt as if something had bumped into the deepest part of her soul, and her aura reflexively faltered for an instant. Immediately thereafter, Tang Wuling's spear began to descend from above. On this occasion, the golden dragon spear didn't let loose a dragon's roar as it usually did. Instead, it was merely shimmering with the purest light, and its tip was aimed directly at the Black Sovereign. Each of the 6 immortal plants around Tang Wuling were radiating dazzling light, and the collective lights being released by them had even concealed the mirror Douluo behind them. Tang Wuling was only a 6-ring soul emperor and a 2-word battle armor master, yet with the enhancements he received from the blood god array, the 6 plant system great beasts, and the seed of life, he had attained an unprecedentedly terrifying level of power. Boom! The demonic engulfment mist and 9-colored mist exploded almost in complete unison, and 2 bursts of extremely fearsome energy erupted within the abyssal passageway. In that instant, the 2 of them were struck by completely different feelings. The first thing that the Black Sovereign experienced was the pressure from this plane. The more she approached the exit of the passageway, the more potent the oppressive force being exerted upon her by the plane became. This was the downside of trying to invade an alternate plane. In contrast, Tang Wuling's spear strike was different from any spear strike that he had ever unleashed in the past. There were no longer any blood essence fluctuations emanating from it. Instead, it had overlapped with this entire plane. In that instant, the Black Sovereign was even struck by the illusion that Tang Wuling had become the core of the Douluo plane, and that this spear strike had been unleashed on behalf of the entire plane. Despite how immensely powerful the Black Sovereign was, in that instant, she felt as if she were being crushed under a mountainous weight, and she was forced back into the depths of the abyssal passageway. The other 6 abyssal emperors that had risen up into the air with her were also struck by a sense of asphyxiation and retreated back into the passageway. Chapter 1107. The spear strike was imbued with such devastating power that even Zhang Guanyun and Cao Dazhou were completely stunned. They had always hoped that Tang Wuling would be able to permanently eradicate the threat of the abyssal plane in the end, but they didn't think that he would play such a prominent role on the battlefield at his current cultivation rank. Tang Wuling was hovering in midair, and at this moment, he was completely immersed in the reflection of the spear strike he had just unleashed. He didn't use his Golden Dragon King bloodline essence nor his fury of the masses to enhance the spear strike. It was just a pure and simple attack. The feeling of being completely enveloped by planar power and becoming one with the entire Douluo plane was truly a riveting experience. This is the path I need to pursue. I think I found it. Tang Wuling raised his Golden Dragon spear again before throwing his head back and letting Li Solong cry up into the heavens. As he did so, the nine-colored light within the blood god array began to tremor gently. The radiance of the seed of life flashed on his forehead, and all of the surrounding natural energies surged toward Tang Wuling as if they had found their origin. The seed of life couldn't directly enhance Tang Wuling's powers, but it could assist him during critical moments of enlightenment. In particular, under the special environment of this blood god array, he was able to reap rewards that would be beyond his reach anywhere else. His suit of battle armor began to glow with scintillating light, and a projection of a massive golden dragon took the place of the massive purple flower projection behind him. Every single scale on his suit of battle armor was radiating dazzling light, and the nine-colored light in his eyes faded before being replaced by an unprecedentedly scintillating golden light. In that instant, he stood like a pillar between heaven and earth, and it was as if he had become the master of this entire world. His golden dragon spear was also glowing with dazzling light, and all of the golden patterns on it had become extremely bright and pure. He thrust his golden dragon spear forward at a very slow speed, but as it traveled through the air, all of the energy in the surrounding area converged toward it. Tang Wuling's entire body was trembling gently, but his eyes were filled with an unprecedentedly resolute and determined expression. That's right, this was the path that he was searching for, the path of regal domination. Seventh technique of the nine arts of the golden dragon, path of regal domination. Countless specks of light converged toward a single point, and the entire abyssal passageway was trembling in the wake of the golden dragon spear. The Black Sovereign's frosty expression took on a noticeable change for the very first time. The aura that she was facing now was something that she had only ever felt from that being. How was this possible? How could such a puny human being be able to unleash such a powerful attack? How could his aura bear such a strong resemblance to that of the Holy Lord? His powers were completely incomparable to those of the Holy Lord. It was also right at this moment that the Black Sovereign finally understood why the Holy Lord was so wary of such a puny human being and trying to destroy him at all costs. This human's latent potential was downright terrifying. If he were allowed to grow and develop into a truly powerful being, then there would be no chance for the abyssal plane to invade the human world, and they could even face an invasion from the humans instead. A serious look appeared in the Black Sovereign's eyes as her long hair pulled down behind her back. She brushed her hands over her sides, seemingly in a gentle manner, but in doing so, she left a trail of afterimages in the air. These afterimages stacked on top of one another before her hands finally came together in front of her body. A speck of pure blackish purple light surged forth from her chest. As soon as this speck of light appeared, the pressure that was being exerted on the Black Sovereign by the Douluo plane clearly lessened somewhat. It was also right at this moment that the seed of life on Tang Wuling's forehead suddenly began to pulse violently. It had never been this active before, and it seemed to almost be in a frenzied state. The Black Sovereign pointed a finger forward once again, but on this occasion, her fingertip had completely taken on a blackish purple color. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, and countless ripples surged through the air. Even the six abyssal emperors couldn't help but cover their ears in unison while their bodies rapidly descended. The Black Sovereign remained completely stationary in midair, but her entire body had already been basked in a layer of golden light that stemmed from the golden dragon spear. In the next instant, her body was swept aside and crashed heavily into the side of the abyssal passageway. The path of regal domination was imbued with unstoppable might. Scintillating golden light pierced straight into the abyss, catching up to one of the retreating abyssal emperors before almost instantly puncturing its chest. The golden light drew back, and in the next instant, the abyssal emperor that had just had its body punctured was dragged back to Tang Wuling. A green vine immediately shot forth from the seed of life before abruptly plunging into the abyssal emperor's body and latching onto its planar seed right away. The aura of the seed of life had become immeasurably more powerful than it had been back in the mirror domain, and it was able to instantly control this severely wounded abyssal emperor. Its abyssal aura was quickly fading away, and its planar seed couldn't even offer up a shred of resistance. Blood One was suddenly struck by a sense of enlightenment upon seeing this, and a smile finally appeared on his face. Blood Nine was also looking on with a smile despite the fact that his flame of life was close to being snuffed out, and his entire body was becoming more and more transparent. Blood One realized that his plan for Tang Wuling had been wrong from the very beginning. Tang Wuling and his Sea of Life should have been activated in the Blood God Array from the very beginning. The planar power and spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered by the Blood God Array were able to enhance them to an immeasurable degree, thereby making them the true cause that could oppose the abyssal plane. This was something that had never happened in the past 6,000 years. It appeared that if the Black Sovereign hadn't allowed herself to be swept aside, then she would have most likely been the one to be destroyed by that attack. To think that just one man and one spear could unleash such devastating power. Of course, this wasn't Tang Wuling's power. Instead, he was channeling planar power through his body and using his golden dragon spear to vent the fury of the Douluo continent. The Douluo continent plane may not be of a caliber that could surpass the abyssal plane, but it was important to remember that true godly beings had been born on this plane before. Regardless of how powerful the abyssal plane, it had never been graced with the presence of a god. So there was a fundamental difference between the two planes. The Black Sovereign's expression had already changed drastically, and she flew back into the depths of the abyssal passageway in a panicked manner. The closer she was to the exit, the more planar pressure she would be afflicted by, whereas the further away she was from the exit, the more abyssal power she would be able to draw upon. What had appeared to be a perfect opportunity to strike was now completely non-existent. Tang Wuling's eyes flashed with golden light, and he flapped his wings gently before immediately arriving outside the Blood God Array. He then pointed his left index finger at Blood Nine, who was about to fizzle out of existence, and a beam of green light instantly shot forth from his forehead before landing on Blood Nine's body. The flame of life that was burning around him was instantly snuffed out, and just as everyone was letting loose cries of alarm, Blood Nine's translucent body suddenly turned into a green color and was abruptly stabilized. Extremely rich life force energy was instantly injected into his body, allowing him to take on a substantial form once again. Blood Nine's expression was filled with disbelief. He could already sense that he was about to blink out of existence, but at this moment, he was stunned to discover that not only did he exist, his life force was being elevated to a high level. Never did he think that something like this would happen. How was this possible? Blood Two's dead and soulless eyes immediately lit up as if life had returned to his body. He stared intently at Tang Wuling with incredulity and gratitude in his eyes. Tang Wuling had naturally sensed what had happened outside the Blood God Array earlier, and he had been deeply moved by Blood Nine's decision to sacrifice himself in order to maintain the Blood God Array. Chapter 1108. In that instant, he was suddenly struck by the feeling that he really couldn't compare with these seniors of the Blood God Battalion. Back when he had taken Blood Nine's position, he had been a little pleased with himself. However, that feeling had now completely disappeared and was replaced by an indescribable sense of admiration. After leaving the Blood God Array, Tang Wuling immediately sensed his own aura plummeting at a rapid rate, and his soul power dropped a few major ranks in the blink of an eye. Without the guidance of the Blood God Array, he was unable to draw upon planar power. Not long after those alarm cries had rung out from the Blood God Legion soldiers, they were replaced by raucous cheers of elation. Blood Nine was alive. Their hero was still alive. On top of that, the one who had revived him was the heroic figure who had rescued the entire Legion. In that instant, Tang Wuling's image had become even more scintillating in everyone's eyes than those of the Legion commander and the Blood Gods. They had just witnessed Tang Wuling destroy an abyssal emperor with a single spear strike. The abyssal plane trembled violently, and another level completely collapsed in the absence of its planar seed. The Black Sovereign could see that Tang Wuling had left the Blood God Array, but she still didn't dare to try and attack him. In that instant just now, she truly felt as if she had brushed shoulders with death. She knew that Tang Wuling had only managed to unleash such an attack by drawing upon the power of the entire plane, but as long as that array existed, she couldn't do anything to him. She was afraid that Tang Wuling was simply baiting her into attacking before unleashing another attack like the one he had just unleashed. There was no way that she could defend herself against such a devastating attack, and if she were to be slain by this opponent, she would truly be dead. As such, she didn't dare to take the risk. In that instant, thoughts of retreat crept into her mind, and she was even beginning to question whether it was a correct decision to attack the human world in the first place. Right at this moment, the abyssal cracks behind her suddenly began to tremor violently. Blood One's expression immediately changed as he hurriedly activated the Blood God Array's power to the very max in order to bolster the seal. However, in that instant, he was stunned to discover that the seal was unable to repress the abyssal plane. An unprecedented pressure was slowly seeping out of the cracks before surging into the abyssal abyssal passageway in a frenzy. After being influenced by this aura, faint layers of energy appeared over the bodies of the Black Sovereign and the other 5 abyssal emperors, and their auras swelled at a drastic rate. Even the plane of pressure from the Blood God array seemed to be no longer able to affect them. Useless trash. A thunderous voice reverberated throughout the entire abyssal passageway. Immediately thereafter, the interior of the entire passageway suddenly lit up with an indescribably bleak and barren white light. It was as if the Blood God array had suddenly frozen, and even Blood One was unable to continue to use its power to bolster the seal. How was this possible? What kind of power was this? Cao Judger was a forward battle armor master, and he had thought that his powers had already reached the very peak below the godly level. However, only now did he realize that there was more than half a step between the limit Douluo and a god. This almighty aura had even thrown his thoughts into disarray. Had such a terrifying being always existed in the abyssal plane? How had their forefathers managed to resist the abyssal plane when they had to face such an immensely powerful being? The seal on the passageway began to shatter, and the cracks quickly expanded as the bleak white color washed over the entire passageway. The cheers from the Blood God Legion soldiers abruptly drew to a halt, and everyone looked on with incredulity at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. The energy emanating from the abyssal passageway had already exceeded their realm of comprehension. The terrifying aura radiating from the depths of the passageway was far more formidable than any soul tool could compare with. Even the 12th grade Godslayer soul missiles didn't possess anywhere near this level of energy fluctuations. The entire mountain range began to quake violently due to the destruction of the seal, and everyone could sense that when the energy finally emerged from the abyss, the entire mountain range was going to be destroyed. We pay our respects to the Holy Lord. The Black Sovereign and the 5 other abyssal emperors backed off to the side with reverent expressions on their faces. Holy Lord? Did such a being exist in the abyssal plane? There was an extremely bitter taste in Blood One's mouth. This was no longer a power that they could oppose. Right at this moment, golden light flashed, and Tang Wuling returned to the interior of the Blood God array again. His eyes were still golden in color, and faint golden light was rising up around his body. Strangely enough, as soon as he returned to the Blood God array, it suddenly seemed to have sprung to life again and regained the ability to gather the 9 types of spiritual energy of heaven and earth, all of which was injected into Tang Wuling's body. Plane of power was triggered once again. The energy fluctuations emanating from Tang Wuling's seed of life also became more violent. Oh. So it's the seed of life of this plane that was behind this. The deep and authoritative voice seemed to be tinged with a hint of elation. This is fantastic. You've spared me the trouble of having to look for you. After capturing the seed of life, all of the life of this world will be my command. Looks like it was worth expending over 10,000 years of my power to break this seal. The seed of life within Tang Wuling's glabella trembled gently, and in the next instant, Tang Wuling's 5th greenish golden soul ring trembled slightly as well. The 6 plant system great beasts that were revolving around his body flew out of the Blood God array in unison before landing on the ground outside the abyssal passageway and taking root there. The Son of Nature soul skill had been automatically unleashed. No, to put it more accurately, it had been unleashed at the behest of the seed of life. Tang Wuling could clearly sense that the seed of life was extremely wary of his voice. Otherwise, it wouldn't have displayed such a strong reaction. Just what kind of being was this? Was it the most powerful being of the abyssal plane? There was no time for him to think, and he immediately pointed his golden dragon spear downward. However, the 6 abyssal emperors merely looked on with disdain and mockery in their eyes at the sight of Tang Wuling's actions. Indeed, the abyssal plane had been forced into retreat by the human race over 6,000 years ago, but at the time, the Holy Lord and a few more of the most powerful abyssal sovereigns were all in hibernation. On this occasion, the Holy Lord was planning to destroy the human race at all costs, and there was nothing that could stand in its way. This array that was able to draw upon plane of power was indeed quite powerful, but the Holy Lord was the ruler of the entire abyssal plane. In the human world, plane of power was distributed all over the entire plane. However, the abyssal plane was different. The constant pressure from the 108 abyssal levels stacked on top of one another had condensed into the purest form of energy, and as a result, a planar ruler was born. After countless years, in the instant that it attained sentience, the entire abyssal plane was destined to rise to greater heights. The Holy Lord didn't even want to stoop to ascending into their divine realm, as it wanted to create a divine realm of its own. Otherwise, with the Holy Lord's powers, it could have become a god a long time ago, and it would have definitely been a god king, so there was no way that the human race could hope to oppose it. On this occasion, the Holy Lord had broken the seal at all costs in a bid to conquer the human world in one fell swoop, thereby crushing the final traces of hope that the human race was clinging onto. All of a sudden, a green color that was filled with vitality almost instantly appeared everywhere outside the abyssal passageway. The green color originated from the 6 immortal plants, and it was spreading at an unimaginable rate. Countless plants emerged from the snow and ice in virtually the blink of an eye, and greenery spread over the entire mountain range. Rich life force energy surged forth before being injected into the Blood God array. At the same time, a series of branches fell into the hands of every Blood God Legion soldier, and they received mental prompts to inject their soul power into these branches. They all did as they were instructed, and the branches lit up with their injections of soul power. The Blood God array that had already dimmed significantly instantly lit up once again. It was undoubtedly the case that even the seed of life had been struck by a sense of peril and had sprung into action. As the Son of Nature, Tang Wuling was releasing his own life force energy to draw all of the surrounding life force energy to himself at all costs. He was even sacrificing his own life force energy to create more life in order to better absorb natural energies. Tens of thousands of Blood God Legion soldiers were also contributing their soul power, making the Blood God array more and more exuberant. All of the power that had been borrowed was drawn into Tang Wuling's body for him to use as he saw fit. This amount of energy was definitely not something that Tang Wuling's body could handle, but he was able to make use of it through the Blood God array. Chapter 1109. The feeling of becoming the ruler of heaven and earth returned to Tang Wuling once again, and on this occasion, this feeling was even clearer to him. He could even sense that there were 2 familiar figures rapidly climbing toward the Blood God Legion. It was them. One of them was none other than Wild Gale Saber Demon Sima Jinkai, the wielder of the dragon-slaying saber who had forfeited their semi-final match under inexplicable circumstances, and the other one was his senior disciple brother from the body sect, Araheng. Why were they both here? That's right, both Araheng and Sima Jinkai had arrived, and of course, they were here for Tang Wuling. They were traveling through the mountain ranges from different directions, and during their journey, they could already sense the enormous energy fluctuations emanating from the Blood God Legion in the distance. Their mentors had told both of them during their first trip to the Blood God Legion, they had to climb there. They weren't allowed to fly as that would be a sign of disrespect to the Legion. As such, they were scaling one mountain after another en route to the Legion base, and all of a sudden, enormous energy fluctuations had erupted from the distance, causing the entire mountain ranges to tremor violently. As a result, Araheng was even struck by an avalanche. Right at this moment, all of them were greeted by the sight of countless green plants emerging from the snow and ice, and their hearts were filled with astonishment. What kind of power was this? Why was it that the mountain ranges that were covered entirely by ice and snow had become a green world that was filled with vitality? They began to rush toward the Legion base as quickly as they could. There were clearly extraordinary circumstances taking place, so both of them broke the rules and released their suits of battle armor to take flight. When they finally flew up high into the air, they were greeted by the sight of 9 different colors of light converging toward a single direction. At the same time, a vast expanse of green light was spreading over every single part of the entire mountain ranges. Both of them flapped their wings with all their might as they flew toward the site of the incident. Even from afar, they could already see a man who was hovering within a 9-colored barrier of light, looking as if he were a pillar between heaven and earth. This golden armored figure was extremely familiar to both of them. Wasn't this the one that they were searching for? Araheng was appraising Tang Wuling's massive body, while Sima Jinkai was staring intently at the golden dragon spear in Tang Wuling's hand. Right at this moment, Tang Wuling slowly raised his right arm as if he were drawing a massive bow before aiming his golden dragon spear directly into the depths of the abyss. In the next instant, both of them were forced back onto the ground at the same time by a burst of terrifying pressure that had appeared in the heavens above. Was the sky falling down? Even the untamed Sima Jinkai and proud Araheng could only look on in astonishment. It was completely unfathomable to them that these energy fluctuations that were threatening to lay waste to heaven and earth could be coming from a single person, and it was the person that both of them were searching for. How could this be? How had he become so powerful? It was as if he had become an actual god. Despite their incredulity, the scenes unfolding before their eyes were undeniably real. A trapped beast still dares to fight? Know your place. Even the blood god array was unable to cut off this rumbling voice, which spread through the entire mountain ranges and even into the scorching basin. They were then astonished to see that the entire sky had become twisted and warped. It appeared as if the sky were about to fall down a moment ago, but it suddenly congealed, and all of the clouds up above instantly crumbled to reveal a clear yet slightly twisted blue sky. They were both struck by a powerful sense of asphyxiation, and in that instant, they felt as if they were about to be completely erased from this world. Vast expanses of green plants in the surrounding area disintegrated into dust before transforming into green light that surged toward that direction. Horror. This was the emotion that Tang Wuling was sensing from the seed of life. This type of horror was the same emotion that the planar seeds had displayed when faced with the seed of life. The seed of life was horrified that it was going to be harmed by this unknown being. Just what was this thing? How could it be so powerful? Tang Wuling's brows furrowed tightly, but there was no fear in his heart. The path of regal domination that he had just attained was swirling deep within his heart, and both his dragon core and soul core were beating violently. If this is to be the end of me, then I must make sure that the spark of my life ignites into the most perfect final flame. Boom. Scorching golden flames abruptly erupted around Tang Wuling's body. This was an opponent that was feared even by the seed of life, so he certainly didn't dare hold back. That's right, he had ignited his own flame of life. Back when he had witnessed Blood Knight igniting his flame of life to protect the blood god array, Tang Wuling's blood had already been set alight in his veins. He was going to protect the entire human race and everyone that he loved. If he could save the tens of thousands of people here and all of the living beings on the entire continent, then so what if he had to sacrifice himself? The golden dragon spear seemed to have sensed that Tang Wuling had ignited his flame of life, and the golden dragon king aura within his body suddenly began to fluctuate violently. He took a deep breath before directing the enormous energy within his body toward his 11th golden dragon king seal without any hesitation. This was no time for being bogged down by qualms and inhibitions. Even the seed of life was drawing upon power at all costs, so he certainly couldn't leave any stone unturned. A violent explosion erupted within Tang Wuling's body, and much to his surprise, after the 11th golden dragon king seal was broken, there was no enormous influx of violent blood essence energy as there usually was. Instead, on this occasion, the blood essence fluctuations were like a gentle stream of water that instantly washed over his entire body. Scales appeared on Tang Wuling's face for the very first time, and his pupils instantly turned vertical. An unprecedentedly thunderous dragon's roar erupted from his golden dragon sphere, and as a result, the warped sky in the outside world returned to normal. This meant that the power currently being unleashed by Tang Wuling had temporarily managed to repress the abyssal Holy Lord's aura. A faint cry of surprise escaped from the Holy Lord's mouth. It was also at this moment that the seal on the abyssal passageway completely exploded, and a colossal hand emerged from within. This was a hand that was as pristine white as jade. It had 7 fingers and was completely devoid of any blood vessels, scales, and hair. In the instant that it appeared, the surrounding patterns of the seal crumbled, and the entire blood god array began to flicker violently. Tang Wuling let loose an explosive cry, and in that instant, he poured forth all of the energy within his body without any reservation. The energy from the Douluo plane, the energy of the seed of life, as well as his own bloodline essence and soul power were all injected into his golden dragon spear. As a result, the golden dragon spear transformed into a massive golden dragon that was over 100 meters in length. It was as if the spear had sprung to life, and it hurtled directly toward the huge white hand. All of the patterns on the blood god array regained their former radiance in the wake of the golden dragon spear, and they began to glow with the most dazzling light. At this moment, all of the blood god legion soldiers and the blood gods of the blood god battalion were pouring forth their power with all their might. All of them knew that if they couldn't force back this holy lord, then the entire blood god legion would be destroyed with the human race to follow. They didn't dare to hesitate or hold back. Only by giving everything that they had would it be possible to oppose this fearsome being. 8th technique of the 9 arts of the golden dragon, all or nothing. In this desperately dire situation, Tang Wuling had attained another technique that belonged solely to him. That's right, it was all or nothing. Fury of the masses was an ability taught to him by old Tang, but path of regal domination and all or nothing truly belonged to him. Chapter 1110. If the fury of the masses were like a medicinal catalyst for Tang Wuling, then the path of regal domination and all or nothing were unstoppable techniques that were invented by and truly belonged to him. This was his path. He had finally found it. However, he was currently facing the ruler of an entire plane. There was no loud clash as everyone had anticipated. Everyone looked on in hope and anticipation, but in the instant that the golden dragon spear finally clashed with the massive 7-fingered white hand, everyone's expressions immediately stiffened. The massive hand had caught the golden dragon spear in its grasp and was playing with it as if it were a little snake. The power within the golden dragon spear had been instantly sealed by the hand, rendering it completely unable to unleash its offensive prowess. Everyone could only look on in despair as the hope completely faded from their eyes. Humph. It's time for you to die. The cold voice seemed to have added a layer of frost oblique white color in the surrounding area, and the golden dragon spear shot back in a flash before instantly reaching Tang Wuling's chest. If it weren't for the fact that Tang Wuling had to be killed, the abyssal holy lord wouldn't have paid such a heavy price to send a part of its own true body into this world. In doing so, it had expended a lot of its own energy, as well as the energy of the abyssal plane. As the target of the holy lord, Tang Wuling felt as if the entire space around him were collapsing inward. The plane of power that was protecting him before had been entirely dispelled, leaving him in a completely vulnerable state. Only the seed of life was still releasing life force energy in a panicked frenzy to try and protect him, but all of those efforts appeared to be completely futile. In that instant, it was as if the entire world had turned into his enemy. Everything between heaven and earth was trying to oppress and crush him. Everything had come so abruptly, yet all of these events were transpiring so slowly in his mind, as if all of his senses had been blunted. What kind of power was this? This was something that Tang Wuling had never experienced. Even when facing the destructive energy storm unleashed by the 12th Grey Godslayer Soul Missile, the entire space was collapsing, and the Holy Lord seemed to be also struggling against something as its entire 7-fingered hand had turned into 9 different colors. As the ruler of a plane, it had forced a part of its true body into an alternate plane that hadn't yet been conquered, so it was naturally going to face vehement resistance from the entire plane. However, this Holy Lord had still descended upon this plane without any hesitation, and it only had one goal, to kill Tang Wuling. It had to kill this human who was truly able to pose a threat to the survival of the entire abyssal plane. The Holy Lord had initially planned to pay a heavy price for no other reward than to kill Tang Wuling, but after sensing the seed of life within his body, it became extremely excited. If it could capture the seed of life of the Douluo plane, then it would be a lot easier for it to devour this entire Douluo continent in the future. A seed of life was an entity that was at the very core of the plane. The golden dragon spear had already arrived, yet Tang Wuling was completely powerless to resist. He didn't even harbor any fear in his heart as he had been rendered physically unable to muster up any emotions. Right at this moment, a faint sigh suddenly sounded within the abyssal passageway. The sigh was extremely gentle, but it was clearly audible to the abyssal holy lord, Tang Wuling, Jiang Wanyun, and the 9 blood gods. As soon as this sigh rang out, it was as if vitality had suddenly returned to this congealed space. A fair and slender hand appeared in front of Tang Wuling before gently grabbing onto the golden dragon spear that was about to plunge into his chest as if the spear were nothing more than a toy. In the instant that the hand gripped onto the golden dragon spear, a layer of curved silver scales instantly appeared over its skin. Immediately thereafter, the golden dragon spear began to radiate scintillating light as if to forcibly struggle free from the restriction that the holy lord had placed upon it before falling into the slender hand. Who gave you the courage to challenge the entire Douluo plane? A cold, yet extremely delightful voice reverberated throughout the abyssal passageway. Someone had appeared beside Tang Wuling. She was clad in a suit of platinum armor that was covered in curved scales. A pair of massive dragon wings were spread open on her back, and the radiance of her battle armor was intertwined with that of Tang Wuling's dragon moon battle armor. She was holding Tang Wuling's hand with one of her hands while holding the golden dragon spear in her other hand. In the instant that she appeared, an incredible change suddenly took place within the blood god array. The 9-color light that was only operating as normal just a moment ago suddenly swelled by in excess of tenfold, transforming into a massive 9-colored pillar of light that was erupting into the heavens. The pillar of light reached at least 10 kilometers in the sky, and countless specks of lights of all types of colors began to converge from even further away. All 9 of the blood gods felt as if a massive burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they were stunned to discover that the blood god array was now completely out of their control. However, the aura emanating from the array was swelling at an incredible rate. Who are you? This is impossible. This plane has no ruler. Tell me who you are. The Holy Lord's rumbling voice was filled with fury and incredulity. The cold female voice rang out in response. Just because you're not aware of something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's merely a sign of your ignorance. The woman's voice didn't seem to hold any joy or elation. On the contrary, it was clearly tinged with hints of sorrow. In the next instant, nine-colored light descended from above, enveloping both her and Tang Wuling bodies. Immediately thereafter, the two of them began to fuse as one right before everyone's eyes. Their bodies swelled in size, and all of the plane of power within the array seemed to have instantly become a part of their bodies. There was even a silver dragon that had appeared around the golden dragon spear, and it quickly turned into a nine-colored sphere while its aura was elevated in a frenzy. The nine-colored dragon spear began to emanate unprecedented power, and the entire abyssal passageway was illuminated by nine-colored light as the shattered patterns of the array reappeared. The puny abyss dares to rear its ugly head against the Douluo plane. The woman's cold voice rang out again. At this moment, the woman who was hovering in midair had already taken on the appearance of a nine-colored battle deity. Her suit of battle armor had far exceeded the size of a normal suit of battle armor, and the projection of a massive nine-colored dragon had appeared behind her. Everyone on the scene was immediately struck by the urge to bow toward this massive rainbow dragon, as if it were the very core that the entire world revolved around. Rainbow life flashed, and in the next instant, the female deity had already appeared right in front of the massive white hand. Her spear was thrust forward like lightning, and in that instant, all of the streaks of rainbow light in the surrounding area instantly fused into the spear, while an extremely lavish and exuberant floral pattern appeared beneath her feet. The abyssal passageway began to tremor violently, and the sky also turned into 9 different colors in that instant. Every type of element was jumping for joy, and in that instant, it was as if all of the natural energies on the entire Douluo continent had gathered at this place. The seven-fingered hand was clearly no longer as relaxed as it was before. It abruptly clenched into a tight fist before clashing with the rainbow dragon spear. A piercing screech rang out while a dull explosion reverberated throughout the passageway. The seven-fingered hand was clearly being forced back while the rainbow dragon spear thrust forward over and over again. Every time the spear clashed with the massive hand, the latter would take on a more pronounced nine-colored glow, and it was clearly firmly on the back foot. Who would have thought that such a dramatic turn of events would unfold? Who was this silver-armored woman, and where had she come from? Why was it that her suit of battle armor was only at the 3-word level at most, but she was able to emit such stunning radiance in the blood god array? Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.